Chapter 12. Lifted. Patience is not simply the ability to wait, it's how we behave while we're waiting. Joyce Meyer. May 17th, 2009. Sunday was quiet. I lay in bed alone with my thoughts much of the day. Late in the afternoon, I heard a chatter in the hall, a light knock, and then 4 strangers entered. The 2 men and 2 women, clearly couples, looked at me and smiled. The dark-haired man spoke up. "We are here in the hospital visiting patients. Is it okay if we stay for a minute?" "Sure," I responded. Their attire resembled the Sunday dress of churchgoers. "We are students at the University of Utah. I'm Kevin," the first said, and then slipped his arm around the woman next to him. "And this is my wife, Lainey. With us are Jen and Dean. On Sundays, we come visit patients, just to say hello, bring an uplifting message, and see if we can do anything to help." Lainey spoke next. "Can we read you a story of hope this afternoon?" she asked. Her brown hair was pulled into a loose bun, displaying dangling silver earrings. "Sure." Lainey read a beautiful short story and offered to leave the periodical for further reading. I accepted. "So you come here every week, just to visit strangers?" I prodded. "About every other week. We take turns with some other friends in our church," Dean said. "Is there anything we can do for you today?" "I think you've already done it," I responded. "It's been pretty slow here today. Everyone is at home with their families, I suppose." "Where is your family? I mean, where are you from?" Jen inquired. My first answer was short, but one question led to another, and in minutes the 4 strangers had heard my story. The women teared up. "I'm hoping next week I can be home with my family," I finished. "We can come back and check on you later this week," Lainey said. "Thank you. I'd like that," I admitted. They left the magazine on my tray table and waved as they exited the room. "Thank you for sharing your time with us today. You've made me realize how much I have to be grateful for," Lainey added. "God bless you." "You as well," I said. The guests demonstrated true charity, without all the hellfire and brimstone of a pulpit sermon. Nausea had moved in after surgery and crowded out my appetite, but the look of Sunday dinner trumped my expectations. Perhaps my appetite was returning. I buttered the roll and carefully took a bite. The clumsiness of my mouth shocked me. I then abandoned the idea of drinking from a cup. A straw proved a little better. But chewing food was a new adventure. Without the muscles to do the work, I couldn't navigate the food in between my teeth to bite. Chunks of food got caught in my cheek and the trough around my gums. Instead of eating, I gagged as the bits of fluffy white roll lolled near the back of my throat, still unchewed. My tongue forced the food back up, and I attempted again. After several efforts, I had only a few successful bites. The roll smelled heavenly, but neither the process nor the taste matched. Switching menu items, I scooped a slice of what appeared to be peaches and tried again. Gag, choke, spit. An Albert Einstein quote popped into my mind. Insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. On the next round, I cut a green bean into small pieces before I put it in my mouth. I held the right side of my mouth closed and tried again to chew. Better. Not perfect, but better. The beans tasted awful, but the process was improved. I ditched the solid foods without attempting the ham. It looked okay, but I was afraid meat would be too hard to chew before swallowing. A giant vanilla milkshake shone as the best option. But to my disappointment, my mouth couldn't close around the tight straw enough to suck the thick mixture from the cup. I could suck up liquid, but the dense shake proved too much for my droopy lips. I wiped the peach juice off my spoon, filled it with milkshake, and slipped it into my mouth. As it had when my mother helped me, most of it spilled back out, over my lips and onto my chin. Even with the varied approaches, insanity approached quickly. Since none of it tasted good anyway, I left the entire meal, minus a few bites, on the tray and pushed the sliding table aside. Part of me wanted to find a punching bag. The logical side of me decided more practice, at the next meal, would be a better option. The nurse came in an hour later, looked at the tray, and stared at me with accusing eyes. "You really should try to eat something." She chided me like a child. I can't keep the food in my mouth, or eat without choking, and everything tastes funny. When the words came out, I sounded childish too. "When you say the food tastes funny, do you mean all of the food or something in particular?" she asked. This time her eyes were more probing instead of scolding. Honestly, all of it. Looked good, but tasted terrible. I thought I was hungry, but the whole experience frustrated me. Total honesty. Okay. She jotted something on the chart that she carried around, and then she looked back at me. Can you at least drink some water or juice for me? We don't want you to get dehydrated. Your IV has been giving you nourishment since surgery, but it's really better for you to get it through your food. Her mother hen voice irritated me. I'm not that sick. Am I? Monday morning, 2 women entered with their arms full of supplies. Their dark hair and skin and similar mannerisms suggested they were related. The first spoke with a heavy Mexican accent. Hi, Ms. Jodi. My name is Marcela, and this is my sister Celeste. We are here to bathe you. Few things in life are more invigorating and awakening to the mind and soul than a hot shower. I longed for the simple chance to stand and let the water splash down my body while steam enveloped me. The morning I first emerged from the fog of surgery, I showered sitting on a stool, but since then, my days and nights had passed in a horizontal state. That meant the only real alternative to a shower was a sponge bath. As much as I wanted a hot shower, I loathed the idea of a sponge bath. I tried to genie wish myself away, to no avail. The sisters readied towels, washcloths, and wipes. They first wiped my arms, then my shoulders and neck, working in a beautiful symmetry. It took several minutes before I could appreciate their tender touch. The wipe of my brow, washing of my body, and the gentle drying of my limbs required enormous amounts of trust and care from those performing the acts. A huge part of me did not want them touching my most intimate and private parts, and yet I needed them, like a newborn needs the touch of a loving mother. Marcella washed my belly in a circular motion with a soft, warm cloth, while Celeste massaged the age and decay off my fingers and hand. They patted me dry and then covered my arms with heated towels. I shut my eyes as the wet cloths neared my hip and midsection, dreading the humiliation that would surely come. But the ladies continued washing, kindly and gently, careful not to embarrass me during the process. They rubbed my legs and feet, and the spa treatment ended with a lotion massage. The warmth soaked deep into me and cleansed my soul as much as my body. Thank you for taking such tender care of me, I said. I looked at Celeste, whose face split into a wide grin. I am so grateful. I know it can't always be an easy job, but I appreciate that you treated me with respect and care. Oh, Miss Jodi, Marcella said, we just want to help you get better. We know we are blessed to work together in this job, to help nice ladies feel clean and, well, like themselves again. Tears came to my eyes. These ladies held no status at the hospital, but they had great stature. And that was more important. The phone rang. The area code showed 808, a Hawaii number I recognized as my sister's. Some days my father answered the calls before my eyes opened, but that afternoon, Dad scooted the table close so I could reach it. Hey Joe, how are you feeling? Christy's petite frame and dark shoulder-length hair appeared in my mind the second I heard her unmistakable voice. She was the oldest of the Orgill children, and I was next in line. As sisters with birthdays under 2 years apart, we spent much of our young lives together. Sometimes we adored each other, and other times we couldn't stand each other, but we shared a room and had no choice except to make it work. Even after we stopped sharing a room, we continued to share much of life. I've been worried about you, hun. How are you? The concern echoed in her voice. Today, I'm actually okay. I've got to tell you about this morning, Chris, I said, and proceeded to give an account of the visitors who treated me to a sponge bath. Oh, that is incredible, Joe. It makes me want to cry. What a beautiful story. Not just a beautiful story, a beautiful experience, I thought. I wish I were there. I just want to see you, sit by your bed, or even babysit your kids. I feel helpless from here, she cried. Christy had said it over and over again. She wanted to find a way to fly to Utah to come help, but my residence came with 24-hour medical helpers, and the truth was, there wasn't anything she could really do for me. That broke her heart, and I heard the hurt every time we talked. Just keep checking in and posting notes on the blog. Those 2 things help more than you know, I tried to convince her. Yeah, but it is so hard to be so far away. I don't even know what is going on most of the time until there is a new post. Hundreds of your blog followers find out before I do, she cried. You've always been the brave one, the one who helped me. But I'm your big sister, and now I just want to be there for you." We were stuck, 3,000 miles apart. Imagine us together, taking a walk to Temple Beach. Maybe if I can get out of here in time, I can still come for graduation, and we can go on the walk together, I proposed. The likelihood that my family would be in Hawaii in a few short weeks looked more and more like a long shot, but we still hoped. "You won't be up for much when you get here, but I don't care if we do anything but sit on the couch. I just miss you," she said. "I know, Chris. Me too." Christy's call reminded me that there were many times in life when we want to be there, to help those we love, but we simply can't. Mom and Dad had told me about all the people who volunteered to leave their own families to come and help us. Christy represented all whose hearts were with me, even though they were not. The spinal fluid leak meant I wouldn't be going home on time. The realization hit hard. If not for the phone calls and visits, it would have been worse. My mom and Tolan's mom, Kay, rotated watching the kids at our house. When she was not on duty, Mom was with me. On her shifts, she was not just present, she was doing something for me. "Can I rub your shoulders, Joe?" She'd been massaging my dad's shoulders for years, and she'd gotten pretty good at it. My tightened muscles released and relaxed. I wished her hands could keep going forever, but I didn't want to wear her out. While Mom alternated between the hospital and house, Dad stayed. It seemed he was always there, sitting by my bed. My father, a CEO and one of the busiest people I know, left his world so he could live in mine. Whenever I opened my eyes, he greeted me with a big smile on his face. "Hiya, Joe," left his lips, followed by, "How are you feeling?" He had sat in a similar setting 3 months earlier, when his mother, my Grandma Lisenby, slowly slipped away over the course of a cold January week. He'd flown into town to say goodbye and appreciated the chance to tend to her as she held on to life. After a week by her bedside, she passed away in the middle of a night while he slept in a chair a few feet away. He wanted to be holding her hand when she died, but I don't think she would ever have gone while her hand was safely tucked in his. For Dad's sake as well as my own, I hoped to see his face a lot more before I saw hers again. My heart ached when Grandma died, but in that moment, staring at Dad, I knew I needed her as my heavenly guardian more than my earthly grandmother. It was selfish, but true. I wondered how hard it must be on him. He would say leaving his work and home was nothing. He was where he needed to be. But I knew the realities and demands. For him, staying with me meant telecommuting across the Pacific Ocean. Tolan visited every day during his lunch break and then again after work. He stayed as long as he could, sometimes for 30 minutes, other times for several hours. He and Dad kept each other company. In and out of painful, feverish periods of rest, I was lousy company, and I knew it. When visitors entered, I tried to play hostess rather than patient. I inched up in bed and focused on the guests rather than the pain. Heidi and Annette's visit made it easy to find reasons to smile. The back-door neighbors acted like sisters. They sat by my bedside as if we were together in my backyard. "We read the blog every day," Heidi said. "Lots of times every day," Annette interrupted. "Your dad is doing a great job of keeping everyone updated. His posts are detailed and always positive," Heidi continued. "But we needed to see you for ourselves," Annette picked up where Heidi stopped. Heidi leaned closer. "How are you doing? Really? Are you okay?" I figured this question would come from every visitor. Being there in person gave them rights to ask hard questions and get real answers, not just optimism. "Most of the time, I'm okay. When the pain is too much, I have the nurse crank up the meds. If those are maxed out, I try to find a happy place in my head. Meditate on the beach somewhere in Hawaii. The painkillers, anti-seizure drugs, and other medications make me really out of it, so I sleep a ton. For now, I'm okay with that." "What about your face? Can you feel anything?" Annette asked. "It's strange because sensation is decreased on the whole right side. I can feel a little, but I can't move it at all. I tell myself to close my eye or pucker my lips, and nothing happens. It's like the wires are cut." "Is it frustrating?" Heidi asked. "It drives me crazy when I go to the dentist and my mouth is numb for a few hours. I can't imagine dealing with it on half of your face." I drool brushing my teeth, eating, drinking, even just sitting. It's annoying, but hopefully it will only last a few weeks. My eye and ear frustrate me as much as my mouth, though, I responded. Can you see at all? Heidi asked. I guess I could see, if the conditions were right, but not blinking leaves my eye dry and irritated, and I don't produce tears to compensate. I've heard those commercials for drops for dry eyes, but I did not get it before. Tears lubricate the eye, and blinking clears out debris. My sight is technically there, but the cornea is scratched and constantly covered in a film of dirt, so all I see is haze. Geez, Jode, it's one thing after another. The blog said you lost your hearing too? Heidi asked what was really on her mind, and I was glad. The hearing in my right ear is gone. Of course, you know a thing or two about that. Yeah, well, I was hoping you'd be spared from that one. Heidi battled a tumor that left her deaf in one ear. She adjusted and her other ear compensated, but I knew she still missed out on conversations. I guess the hardest part is I feel like I have a blind side. I don't hear people approaching from my right side, and I don't see them either. It is a little unnerving to roll over and find someone standing next to my bed. It makes me feel vulnerable. Annette and Heidi exchanged a glance. Okay, we've talked all about my face, I said, but neither of you has admitted that the shaved head and droopy face is an enviable look, right? Oh, Jodi, Annette started in, the fact that you are alive is pretty much a miracle. I think you look great. If laughs could be sarcastic, mine would have been. I look that bad, huh? I teased. No, you look like you've been through something traumatic, which you have. My girls cried when they saw the pictures online. We all did. But the good part is, you are still smiling and beautiful. So you are still you. Really, it isn't too terrible, I said. Everyone here treats me like this is normal, so I act like it is. Are you writing all of this down in a journal or something? Heidi asked. The anti-seizure meds make my hands shake so badly, I couldn't write a thank you card. I guess it's a good thing Tolan and my dad are keeping track of things on the blog. Of course, they are recording the days from their perspectives, not mine. But maybe that is good, for now. It felt liberating to be open with them. My world was all within the neuro unit bubble, so real questions from friends helped me process the experience. Heidi and Annette handed me a colorful gift bag and scooted back in their chairs. They were in sync. Time to go. Thank you for coming to visit. If it weren't for my dad, it would be pretty lonely here. I hope you can at least stay and eat in Salt Lake since you're here. Find a tasty spot and enjoy a meal for me, too. We'll do it, Heidi said. They hugged me and then walked out the door. The bag held pajamas that appeared comfy and ready to be worn. I looked around the sterile, neutral room and realized any place could be beautiful when filled with friends. 2 groups stopped by each morning. Dr. Coldwell and his team of neurosurgery residents and Dr. Shelton's neuro-ENT residents. Your chart said you aren't eating much. Your food intake is very low, as is your output. Dr. Shelton's statement was matter-of-fact and less accusatory than the nurses. My output? Glad that's recorded. But the nurses love being on output duty. Is it an appetite issue or a taste issue? Well, even when I'm hungry, nothing tastes good. Everything tastes off. I wondered if I sounded silly. That is called dysgeusia, and unfortunately, it is sometimes part of facial paralysis, he said. With total facial paralysis, some people lose all taste. Yours, it appears, is distorted. The taste receptors are essentially paralyzed too, so your senses, made by chemical processes, don't translate the tastes of the food properly. Distorted is a kind description, I replied. When I eat, none of it even tastes, well, like food. Whether food is sweet or sour or bitter or buttery, everything tastes eerily the same. Kinda earthy, like minerals or metals. I could be spooning a milkshake into my mouth or attempting to chew ham, and the net taste is about the same. You're telling me that's normal? Well, each patient experiences dysgeusia differently. The metallic taste is common. Some describe it as sucking on pennies. Eating is such a chore with my mouth not functioning, and because food doesn't taste good, the whole process seems pointless and frustrating. That is understandable, but IVs are only meant to be temporary. They are artificial sustenance. You will get stronger, faster, if you get your nutrients from food. I nodded. How long will the dysgeusia last? I hoped for a good answer. Hard to say. It depends on how quickly your nerves recover. I manage all of the hospital's patients with facial paralysis. For some, it only takes a few days. For others, a few weeks. But it can be a year or more. Dr. Coldwell said the nerves looked good, so we expect a full recovery. A year or more? Perhaps they'd said it to each other, or maybe even to my family. But no one had told me the paralysis could possibly last for so long. I struggled to digest the information. He inquired about a few more issues, the spinal fluid leak and subsequent spinal headaches, and said again to give it more time. The 6-day schedule I left at home began to seem woefully inadequate. Dr. Shelton left, and I thought about the possibility of paralysis lasting for a year. The dryness and itching in my eye drove me crazy. Eye patches, makeshift weights, and tape had done little to relieve the constant irritation. My deaf ear left me vulnerable. I answered questions I thought had been asked instead of the ones I'd actually been asked. Every scenario spun me round and dropped me in a different place. But my taste buds? Tolan and I were foodies, not dining snobs, but we enjoyed the flavors and taste combinations of savory dishes. We were fortunate to live in an ethnically diverse area where there was no shortage of foreign fares to tempt our salivary glands. We regularly craved chicken tikka masala, curry, naan and mango lassis, freshly made salsa, ceviche, guacamole, and chicken flautas, stacked beef enchiladas, garlic bread, and spinach calzones, and massaman curry, spring rolls, bento boxes, and sushi. On 25th Street in Ogden and the surrounding downtown district, we were regulars at Indian, Mexican, Italian, Japanese, Thai, and sushi restaurants. We simply loved good food. But with facial paralysis, eating became utilitarian at best. Years before, as a freshman in college, I swallowed a pill without drinking any water. The pill lodged in my throat, disintegrated, and burned a hole in my esophagus. It required surgery and a several-week recovery, then included daily numbing my throat so I could eat small amounts of baby food, yogurt, pudding, and other soft foods. The jars of bland baby food seemed a harsh punishment for the thoughtless mistake. But dysgeusia and the idea of tasteless or earthy-tasting food imposed a sentence for a crime I didn't commit. I grabbed the covers and rolled onto my left side, hopeful a rest would restart my brain. As I tugged at the blanket, it came untucked from the bottom of the bed. My toes peeked out, the deep burgundy color still bright and polished, the flowers still blooming. The memories from the girls' spa night surged into my mind, along with my personal promise to be positive, grateful, and not lose myself. Choosing to see the good, even in the midst of tragedy, frustration, or heartache, had always parted the clouds and let the rays of sun stream into my life. I reminded myself I was still in control, at least of my own thoughts and actions. The negatives and what-ifs fled, and I tucked the covers under my legs for a better view of my sparkling toes. A heavy musical knock sounded on the door. My next-door neighbors, Cammie and Brian, peeked their heads in before they stepped through the door. Light brown shoulder-length hair and a big smile trademarked Cammie. The contractors for our housing development doubled as our first friends in the neighborhood. "Come in," I said. Dad hopped up and gave the chair to Cammie. Brian grabbed another seat and they inched nearer my bed. "For as much as you're paying for this place, you better have 100 channels and 24-hour room service." Brian jumped in, his sarcastic sense of humor normal and relaxed. My crooked smile didn't do them justice. Cammie turned to me. "Jodi, how are you?" "Well, I'd rather be at home, but I'm okay." "What she really means," my dad chimed in, "is she's doing pretty well considering the headaches are pretty awful, but staying in bed 23.5 hours a day is just as bad." My guests shook their heads. A practiced communicator, Dad knew how to say the hard truth. I wanted to play hostess. His comment was a stark reminder that none of us were there to be entertained. "Hopefully you are racking up major reward points in this joint. This should earn you a vacation getaway at least." Brian could always be counted on to lighten the mood. His comment paved the way for more normal talk about the neighborhood and kids. Dad snapped a picture of us as they sat by my bed. "We better get going," Cammie said when the conversation came to a natural pause. You're amazing, Jodi. I can't believe you still have a smile on your face with everything you're going through. Having friends here makes me want to smile, so thank you, I replied. Hang in there, Brian said. Make sure to cash in on that vacation you're earning. My friends hugged me and walked out the door. A little act of friendship goes a long way, huh, Joe? Dad said. My feelings, exactly. I pictured children running around and riding bikes in our cul-de-sac. The most important things in life aren't things at all. Chapter 13. Boy. Doing the right thing for someone else was like a tonic for me. It was like some magic ointment that made a wound disappear. Susie Bright. The door creaked open and dim lights shone overhead, signaling another early start to the hospital day. Any feelings of frustration or anxiety that had crept into my mind during the night exited when Tyson entered the room. A young 20-something guy with dirty blonde hair as twisted as curly fries, Tyson earned his way through college as a phlebotomist, a needleman. His weekday 4 a.m. visits marked each night's end. Unlike the weekend guy, who never wore a smile, Tyson's friendly face greeted me day after day. Of all the doctors, nurses, and specialists in the hospital, only Tyson's blood draws never hurt. When he slid the needle into my arm, he treated me like a baby he was trying not to wake. Quiet and gentle. Good morning, Jodi. How are you today? He whispered the words, a better wake-up call than an alarm clock. Within the first week of my hospital stay, his face became familiar, a welcome sight. Instead of dreading the pin-poke and blood draw, a grin cracked my sleepy face each morning when the lights hummed on. Some days I was too sick for chit-chat. On those mornings, his presence was more important than usual. Though the blood he drew would indicate my condition to the doctors, my personal indicator beeped results long before daily tests confirmed my struggles. During those moments, Tyson stood as a symbol of hope for better days. We never talked about his ultimate plans for life, but I knew that whatever he chose, he would make a difference. Tyson's tender care compelled me not to feel sorry for myself, but to be grateful. When he left my room that morning, my mind began to fill invisible notebook pages with the good things in my life. Phone calls from my kids, Dad bringing a chick flick to watch, care packages from friends, neighbors who made treats for my family, an evening surprise visit from Mark, well wishes on the blog, the mystery man who mowed our lawn, gentle nurses, dreams of home, hospital visitors, Mom rubbing my back, Tolan putting lotion on my dry legs, reading the newspaper, fragrant flowers in my room, soccer carpool moms, and prayers offered by strangers. The list got longer every day. I quickly learned I could impact my health and attitude with gratitude. As a patient at a teaching hospital, I learned that doctors and residents do rounds early in the morning and mid-evening because they are in clinic all day. This knowledge made Dr. Coldwell's midday stopover intriguing. Tolan had just removed my food tray when Dr. Coldwell entered the room. Hi, Jodi, he greeted me and then nodded to Tolan and my dad. I'm glad you're all here. I have some news for you. The pathology results on your tumor came back. Dad looked at me, held his breath, and looked back at Dr. Coldwell. Good news is the tumor is benign. The mass we tested is not cancerous. Well, I'd say that's great news, Dad cheered. All right, Jodo, this is just what we've been hoping for. He patted my arm. I lifted my fists high in the air for the celebration. The kind doctor paused for our victory dance, but remained still, as if waiting to begin again. Is there other news? I asked. While the mass is not malignant, it is still a mystery. The tumor does not match anything on record, so we still don't know what exactly it is or how it may behave in the future. He paused. My best guess is based on a similar experience several years ago. The patient acquired an illness while traveling abroad and later developed a mass of tissue, not unlike yours. Though the pathology is indeterminate, I suspect your immune system produced additional cells to engage the invading germs, and the tumor is excess tissue left from the battle. You mean you think Jodi got a disease and her body fought it off? Tolan clarified. He nodded. Maybe. The growth was slow, likely over a number of years. So it is possible that she contracted an infection when you spent time overseas. There are many germs in third world countries that locals tolerate, but Westerners do not. Rivers and lakes are full of them. You probably remember that from the Nile. Local children play in the water every day, but foreigners get ill from merely touching it. Until that moment, I'd forgotten he knew about our travels abroad. The personal history questionnaire from early in the diagnosis process returned to my mind. Does that mean the tumor has been growing for more than 12 years? Dad questioned. We have no way to know for sure, but it is certainly possible that the mass grew in response to foreign cells that endangered her body. Whether that occurred 12 years ago or 2 isn't clear, but my sense is several years at least. Dr. Coldwell finished with us and left. Tolan, Dad, and I looked at each other in amazement. Most of the news excited us, but the mystery left us reeling. I wondered if Dr. Coldwell's theories had hatched after first learning my foreign history. My mind filled with memories of filthy riverbeds, dirty bathroom tile floors, even sewage seeping into the Red Sea. We'd been warned not to drink the water in Egypt, and I'd been careful to obey, but I'd showered in it and waded through it, as had thousands of other tourists and visitors. I spent the afternoon analyzing, but finally concluded that we would probably never really know. The doctors were getting impatient. So was I. The spinal fluid leak was not sealing, a repair the body often makes on its own, usually within a few days. We hit the week mark after surgery, and they decided a lumbar drain was the next step. A familiar resident entered my room, and immediately I knew what was coming. A similar long needle had punctured my back weeks earlier to test my spinal fluid for diseases in the brain. It had caused a leak in my spine. With the leak in the brain, the needle would be placed into the spine and left there, acting as a valve, so the doctors could regulate the flow of spinal fluid in hopes of encouraging the body to seal the leak itself. The process of curling my body reminded me of getting an epidural. Once the dreaded needle slid into my spine, the resident covered it with gauze and taped it to my back. A long tube and a clear collection sac hung from the needle. When the doctor opened the valve, fluid would drip into the bag. The change in spinal pressure would tell the body a leak needed to be repaired. When the valve was closed, the fluid flow would return to normal. At normal levels, fluid would not drip from my nose or throat, and the debilitating spinal headaches would disappear. The needle and tubes taped to the right side of my body forced me to stay on my left side all the time. Even rolling onto my back shot pain through me, so I reverted to the fetal position for nearly 24 hours a day. Tolan again joined me at lunchtime. He walked straight to my bedside when he arrived. Hi, hun. I need to tell you something. I got a call from Trendon's teacher yesterday after I got home. His abrupt greeting surprised me, and I sat up as my mother senses kicked into gear. What's wrong? He isn't eating lunch at school. He's not eating? No. His teacher said he hasn't eaten for days. The first time she just thought he wasn't hungry, or maybe he'd forgotten his lunch. So she asked him if he wanted to get a school lunch, but he said he was fine. Then she noticed he didn't eat all week. All week? Is he sick? That's what she wondered, so she asked if he was okay. He said yes, so she asked why he wasn't eating. Tolan paused. He told her he was fasting for his mom, who was in the hospital with a brain tumor. Oh my gosh, he's still fasting for me? Who told him to do that? No one did. When he came home from school, I talked to him. It was his idea. He fasts through breakfast and lunch, eats dinner, and starts again the next day. I don't think any adult would ask that of a kid his age, especially not for so long. I told him what he was doing was great, but he shouldn't do it every day. Do you know what he said to that? What? He said, "But I want to. I am fasting to help Mom." Tears welled in my eyes. He sure loves his mom. I love him too. He amazes me. He's handling it like a young man, not a kid. Seems he is growing up fast right now. Wish I were there to see it. You may not be there to see it, but you are the reason for it. He's learning some important lessons right now and putting aside his own feelings and comforts in hopes of benefiting his mom. It's pretty powerful. I marveled at the changes taking place in my little family. The kids had already experienced so much trauma. I wanted to spare them from any more. But the selfless act of my 4th grade son made me realize not all the effects of my tumor were bad. A few hours after Tolan left, a man in scrubs walked into my room and grinned as if he knew me. Most residents weren't so friendly. "How's the patient today?" The lightly freckled face in front of me smiled, and I prepared to answer the normal flurry of questions. "You ready to come back to Riverdale and watch the Munchkins run around the neighborhood until dark?" Only after he spoke did I recognize my good friend. I'd never seen him dressed in scrubs from toes up, his blonde hair sticking out of the blue stretchy cap on his forehead. "Eric," I greeted him and inched up in my bed. "Hey, neighbor." He'd caught me at a good moment. Alone, but not lonely. I'd been doing the only thing I ever seemed to do. Rest. "Are you here for a procedure?" I asked. Yep. Been in surgery all morning. Just finished up and thought I'd come say hi before I head home." Eric wasn't a hospital employee. He was a medical rep, but his badge must have displayed all the right stats, because he seemed perfectly at ease in the unit. He gave me the updates in neighborhood news, most of which was really love and well wishes from my kind friends. "You're the talk of the town," he said. "Everywhere we go, people are talking and asking about you. It's going to make me pretty popular to go home and give a personal update," he laughed. "Wish I had some dirt to give you, something to really get people talking," I teased. We chatted for a few more minutes, keeping it light and fun. When he left, I sent him off with hellos for neighborhood friends. "Take care." He waved, saluted me, and walked out of the room. A smile lingered on my face, and I wondered how I ever got so lucky. My sister-in-law said in her neighborhood in Boston, everyone kept to themselves and scurried around with their eyes straight ahead. I never realized what a blessing it was to be part of a community that cared. The bright flowers across the room seemed to bloom in agreement. Chapter 14. Miles Away. Courage doesn't always roar. Sometimes courage is the quiet voice at the end of the day saying, "I will try again tomorrow." Mary Ann Rodmacher. May 22nd, 2009. The bell rang on the last day of school, and visions of celebrations filled my mind. Children poured out the school doors and onto the blacktop, their bright faces bubbling with anticipation. Friends scrawled phone numbers and promises of summer parties on the yearbook pages, then passed the cherished books on to the next student in line. The picture sheets filled with crazy memories, hopes, and dreams for the next year. Then an alarm sounded, and exuberant cheers filled the air. Hundreds flocked to the field for the ceremonial spraying by the Riverdale Fire Department. Water gushed from the hoses as little bodies dashed in and out of the stream. The wetter, the better. I imagined my young ones enjoying the festivities, elated with the watery rite of passage. They were right where they should be. I was not. Dad's laptop distracted me and allowed me to pass some time online. Neighbors posted pictures and notes on my blog, telling me how well Lindy had performed her piano piece in the year-end talent show. They cheered for her and chanted her name after her big finish. I hadn't even known she was playing in the talent show. I wondered who helped her get ready. It certainly hadn't been me. Soccer practices and games continued as planned. Trendon got rides with neighborhood friends. Their families picked him up with the carpool and cheered when he did well, as though that was how it had always been. Neighbors and friends delivered homemade bread, treats, and meals to our home 2 or 3 days every week. Pasta, chicken, and cheesy potatoes, the kids' favorite dishes, became regular entrees on our family dinner table. Decorated cookie bouquets arrived and were devoured in minutes. I heard they were beautiful and delicious. Grandma Orgill and Grandma Brown mothered my children daily. Tolan and I marveled at the time and sacrifice of our moms. Parenthood does not end at high school graduation, and no one proved this more lovingly than our mothers. They took care of all the needs of our family, adopting routines and accommodating schedules. My tight-knit neighborhood developed into their second home. Breakfast, reading, laundry, cleaning, jobs, and playtime all happened under the watchful eyes of the grandmas. It's been said it takes a village to raise a child. We found it takes a community to nurture a family in need. Tolan was in the middle of everything, orchestrating the balancing act between home, work, and the hospital. Meanwhile, I was stuck, juggling nothing, missing everything. Emotions switched on and off in me like lights. Lindy took swim lessons with a friend, and I didn't know about it. The kids went on play dates, and babysitters watched them at home whenever needed. People showed up at the doorstep at all times of the day and evening to check in or drop off a little something to help the youngsters make it through another day. How gratitude and frustration live in the same heart puzzled me, but they both resided in me simultaneously. I had planned the first days of my hospitalization so life would go on without me, but that was supposed to be a temporary solution. My mouth hurt, and I realized I'd been grinding my teeth. My kids deserve amusement parks, water slides, and popsicles, but I should be there. Pictures arrived in Tolan's inbox, and he showed me how well they were doing, how much fun they were having. The sight made me smile, and then cry. For years, we'd left on summer vacation just hours after the kids got out of school. We'd journeyed with Debbie and Brandon's family to Sun Valley for Memorial Day weekend. That weekend, Tolan and I read their texts and looked at their pictures of where we wanted to be. Our friends reported that they sat in the condo retreat and thought of us. We sat in the hospital and thought of them. Sympathetic to our plight, they brought back treats for our children from the candy store we normally visited together. The kids should have been grateful, but instead were disappointed. It wasn't the candy they usually got, which emphasized how they had missed out on something they loved. When the sun set, I imagined that all the exhausted and dirty little bodies collapsed into bed and slept. Though I couldn't tuck them in, I trusted they felt loved and comforted, because the village had taken them in. I rolled over in bed, knowing that my heart slept 50 miles away from my body. Chapter 15. The Sun. Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Martin Luther King, Jr. May 25th, 2009. The 13 days passed like 100. Dark, cloudy skies poured spring rains, but instead of growing and blooming, I lay dormant. The spinal fluid leak imprisoned me, and restlessness grew inside. Tolan came on his lunch hour as usual, and just like he did nearly every other day, he stayed much longer than an hour, for which I was grateful. "Hey, look what I've got," he said. I turned toward the sound of his voice and saw a wheelchair. "Hop in, we're getting out of here." He came to the bed, sat me up, and then lifted me into the chair. The IV tower on wheels still pushed fluid through my veins, even as I dragged it from the room. "Your head okay?" he asked. "So far," I responded. "Where are we going?" "Out. Anywhere but here." We strolled leisurely through the hospital corridors like mice navigating a maze. When we got bored, we got on the elevator and started again on another floor. The smell of grease and salty fries hit me as we rounded the corner. Tolan visited the cafeteria often, but it was my first trip. "Want to go inside and get something?" Getting lunch felt as exotic as the trip to the Holy Land. "No, I don't think so." I wanted to get lunch and feel normal, but two things stopped me. One, food didn't taste good. Two, the cafeteria was for everyone, not just patients. I had yet to find the courage to expose myself to strangers who would see me in my new form. As we rolled past the cafeteria, something else caught my senses more than the aroma in the air. At the end of the hallway, a man opened a door, and light poured in. Sunlight. Tolan stole furtive glances and pushed me toward the door like escaping convicts. "Are we allowed to do this?" I asked. "Who cares? We're going." Tolan moved faster, focused and intense. We neared the door. I wondered if a security guard was going to stop us at the last second. My heart raced like a teenager skipping school. I longed to escape. As we rode through the doorway, the small wheels of the IV tower caught on the metal doorframe, nearly undoing our planned hooky time. Tolan grabbed the tower and hoisted it so we cleared the exit. My pulse sped, and I processed reality outside of the hospital. A beautiful, warm ray of light hit my face. The bright beams of sun showered down like stars falling from heaven. I had to catch my breath. "You haven't been outside in 2 weeks. How does it feel?" Tolan asked. I breathed slowly to let the warmth and light soak into my being. "Wonderful," I said as I exhaled. "The air is so fresh and clean. It doesn't smell like a hospital." The crispness of the air cleansed me from the weeks of suffocation. Vibrant green grass, shrubs, and trees lived just feet away. The change in scenery brought clarity to my mind. Above the rain and behind the clouds, the sun still shines. With the paralysis, my eye couldn't dilate to adjust for the light, so the brightness eclipsed my sight and blinded me for a few moments. I basked in the sun anyway. The simple grandeur of the moment captivated me. Tolan and I sat outside as the wind blew and the sun warmed our skin. Finally, the beep of the IV monitor broke our trance. Glancing at the flashing red numbers on the screen, I sighed. "We'd better go." He wheeled me back inside, and the door thudded closed. With the light gone, shadows darkened the halls. The fresh air faded, replaced by the sterile ammonia hospital scent. The joyride spiked my temperature and another spinal headache, a steep price, but I paid it gladly. The hour with my best friend in the sunshine remedied any costs. I would never again take sunlight for granted. Chapter 16. Trickle. Verse is not written, it is bled. Out of the poet's abstract head. Words drip the poem on the page, out of his grief, delight, and rage. Paul Engel. May 26, 2009. The doctors concurred it was time to see if the spinal fluid leak had sealed. The needle from the lumbar drain remained firmly in place in my back, but the resident closed the valve, so no fluid released into the bag. Closing the valve acted as a test on my body. Without the fluid being pulled from my spine, my body would have to regulate itself. A leak in the brain can't be seen, so the only indications would be the headaches, and whether or not the fluid continued to drip from my body. My on-again, off-again fever was also an indicator, so once it stabilized and the hole sealed, I could go home. The additional days in the hospital had been painful and long, probably even longer for my family. Going home would mean the passing of the storm. Home was pure sunshine. I could not contain my excitement at the thought of leaving. By the next day, my fever subsided, furthering my giddiness. A new bouquet arrived, brightly colored blooms of paper flowers inscribed with love notes and well wishes. The hundreds of notes from friends at church formed a beautiful arrangement of unwilting love. I hoped to say thanks in person soon. Waiting to make sure the leak sealed required patience I could hardly muster. The only way we would know for sure was to do a final drip test in the morning. As long as fluid didn't leak from my nose, I could go home. My legs squirmed and my fingers wriggled, anxious to be useful again. Sleep finally came on what I hoped would be my last night in the hospital. I woke to use the restroom in the middle of the night. Delirious, but awake, I used the IV tower as a crutch and hobbled to the toilet. My head lifted upright for the first time since the drain was closed, and a few small drops dripped out of my nose. No, it can't be. The leak sealed. I know the leak was fixed. I dabbed at my nose with a tissue. If I don't tell anyone, I can still go home tomorrow. No one has to know. I won't say anything, and they'll let me leave. Black thunderclouds loomed over my reality as I hobbled back to my bed. The headaches had never left. No matter who else I could fool, I had to admit the truth to myself. Reluctantly, I called the night nurse and explained my discovery. No going home tomorrow. Suddenly, the lights flashed on, and 5 doctors and residents crowded in the room. The nurse had relayed the news. Unbelieving, the entire staff on duty came, at 2 a.m., to see for themselves. I knew the routine. I pushed myself onto my elbows, sat up, and leaned my head forward. As anticipated, the first few drops turned into a steady flow of fluid. A resident I didn't recognize collected the fluid in a flask. The one in charge said they would have it tested, but the truth had already dripped out of me. The leak had not sealed. Dr. Shelton had said if the leak didn't seal on its own, another brain surgery would be needed. The storm broke loose. I collapsed onto my bed, rolled onto my stomach, and buried my head in the pillow. The sun is still shining, I told myself. I can't give up now. I turned toward the clock. The bright glowing light showed 2:38 a.m., but I called Tolan anyway. I'd had enough of the residents and nurses. I needed him. After the sleepiness in his voice wore off, he asked me again, "Are you sure?" "Yes." I hung up the phone and stared at the ceiling. Tolan's voice told me he wasn't prepared for more combat any more than I was. Doubt crept into my mind. I didn't know how much longer I could fight a battle I didn't know how to win. 16 long days in the hospital had already passed, but we arrived back at square one. Only one option remained: surgery number 2. The neurosurgeons were attending an out-of-state conference, which prevented a close surgery date. The procedure was scheduled for June 2nd, still days away. I felt stuck. My neighbor Belinda paid me a surprise visit one evening. She walked in with a tray of 4 large Jamba Juice drinks, sunshine in a cup. "Well, hello, my friend." I smiled at the greeting in her thick English accent, as I'd heard so many times before. "I brought you a little treat. We weren't sure which flavor you like, so we bought them all. That way you can choose." Belinda recited the list of smoothie flavors. I chose an orange and berry drink. She unwrapped a straw and gave me the cup. "Thank you, Belinda. I can't believe you drove all the way here to bring me a Jamba." "I didn't drive all the way here to bring you a smoothie. I came to visit my friend. The treat was just a little something to help make your night a little better." I sucked a little smoothie through the straw. It was messy and dripped from my lips, but the icy drink soothed my mouth. Still, I felt a little guilty taking it, knowing the gift was a sacrifice for a family with 6 children. "What in the world are you going to do with all the extra smoothies?" "Well, Kelly is in the car with the children, so I told them they could share the rest." "They are out in the car now?" "Yes, but don't worry. They knew when we left that they wouldn't be able to come in. They are fine in the car." Belinda, I didn't know they were waiting in the car. You'd better run. Don't keep them waiting any longer on my behalf." "They wanted to come. Kimmy and Kenya said to tell you hello. We check your progress every day." The round trip totaled more than 100 miles, but they came just to bring me a pick-me-up and a warm greeting. I thanked my friend again and hugged her before I shooed her out the door to rejoin her family. After she left, I sent a text message to her. Thank you for the delicious treat. You made my night. Give your family my love." She responded immediately. "As soon as I got into the car, the kids asked if you liked the Jamba Juice. I told them you loved it. They clapped and cheered. Then we passed around the extras. 1 smoothie for me, 3 for her whole family to share. I don't remember if I liked the taste of it on my tongue. I can't even remember if it tasted good. But I will always remember the sacrifice, love, and friendship delivered along with 16 ounces of fruit juice." During most days, Dad remained faithfully by my bedside, despite the deferred surgery. He never mentioned that he should be getting back to his job or the rest of his family in Hawaii. He just smiled and helped me pass the time. "Hiya, Joe." Dad's smile one morning told me he was up to something. "Hey, what's going on?" "I just thought you could use a little lift today." His grin grew ever wider as he put his things down on the table and grabbed items from his bag. He took out an old cassette tape player and plugged it in, then fiddled with the buttons and sat down in the most comfortable chair in the room. "Are you ready?" His cheeks glowed and his eyes shone so bright I thought the sun might burst out from within him. I didn't know what little surprise he had planned, but I was ready to find out. "Yes, sirree, I am ready." Dad pressed the play button, and static started in the background. Laughing voices sounded far away. On the tape, a female cleared her voice. I waited for the show to begin. "Here we go." I immediately recognized the voice. It was my sister, Christy. "Now, I'll ask you a question, and you just tell me whatever comes to your mind, okay?" "Okay, just don't ask me anything I won't know the answer to." Grandma Lisenby's unmistakable voice rang through the old tape player. The moment I heard her, wonderful warmth filled my chest. I wanted to cheer, laugh, and cry all at the same time. "Where were you born?" Christy asked. I was born in Grantsville, Utah, June 22nd, 1917, Grandma started. I looked at Dad, amazed. Where did you find them? He paused the recording to answer me. Joe, I must have looked for these tapes 100 times. I was sick thinking we had lost the recordings of Grandma's history. But today, well, today I think she just wanted you to know she is still here for you. Heat radiated in my chest and warmed my soul. A few years earlier, Christy had recorded her conversations with Grandma and then transcribed her history. But the tapes had long since disappeared, and we all believed they were lost forever. The resurrection of the missing cassettes seemed like a miracle, just the miracle I needed to keep going. The whole day, Dad and I sat together and listened to Grandma tell stories from her youth. We laughed and cried in unison as her voice traveled from heaven into my room. Before dinner, Dad's phone rang. I'd been resting, so he took the call and went into the hall. When he returned, I opened my eyes and met his gaze. Brettster says to tell you hello and that he is praying for you, Dad said. He is, of course, joined by the rest of the family in Utah and at least half of La EA and the BYU Hawaii family. Good folks, all of them. He nodded and smiled. Brett arrived as the finale of the Orgill clan. He was only 2 years old when I went off to college. I knew Brett only slightly better than the neighborhood children I babysat, until he accompanied us on a family vacation when he was 12. He acted more like a big brother than an uncle to my kids, which they loved. Dirt biking, running, and football were a huge part of his life. Brett could catch a football while flying 3 feet in the air and getting knocked over by a guy twice his size. Amazed me every time. His big heart, steady values, and unwavering faith made him a strong man, which is better than a strong player any day. The detailed messages Dad relayed from loved ones made it seem like people were always at the hospital. But I thought Tolan was actually with me more than he should be. I couldn't understand how he could be at the hospital so much when he also needed to split his time between work and home. He visited with me, updated me on the kids and neighborhood, and even rubbed my dry legs with lotion. He sat by me and worked on his computer, made calls, and read. Then the call came. Getting up from the chair by my bed, Tolan mouthed the words, "It's Dave, the CEO." My heart dropped. He walked out of the room and into the hallway. He'd spent so much time with me at the hospital. I feared it had caught up with him. Butterflies flitted all over in my stomach as I waited for his return. I dreaded the possibility that he would lose his job and we'd have no insurance. Several minutes later, he walked back in, but I couldn't read the expression on his face. His brow furrowed, and his voice cracked as he started to speak. "That was Dave," he said again. "I can't believe it." "What?" I begged. He said, "Tolan, I just heard about your wife. Sorry I didn't know earlier. I just want you to know there is nothing at work that is as important as you being with Jodi. Don't worry about what's going on here. You need to be with your family. Come in when you can, but do not worry about your job. We will take care of things here. You take care of things there." A lump caught in my throat. The scenario trumped even my highest hopes. Tolan didn't say it out loud, but the relief washed over him. One less thing to worry about. With his job secure, he could focus on his family. The kiss on my forehead woke me. "I'm heading home to go check on everyone and give your mom a break," Tolan said. He looked across the room and nodded. "Your dad is sticking around, so you'll still have company. But if you're tired, go back to sleep. Love you." "Bye. Love you too," I replied. I watched as my heart walked out the door. "Anything I can do for you, Joe?" Dad asked. The phrase represented more than a simple question. It was his personal motto. He asked it often and always meant it. If a need existed, Dad truly wanted to help. I shook my head. "I'm okay. Just going to get some more rest." "I'll be right here if you need me." Pain medication flowed through my veins, and the grogginess dulled my aches. But I didn't like seeing life through a dirty window. People get addicted to the kinds of narcotics pumped into my body 24/7 during my hospital stay. but I couldn't imagine why anyone would want to live life that way. A few hours later, I woke again. This time, Mom sat next to Dad by the window. "Hey, sweetie, how are you feeling?" Mom asked. It took me a few minutes to evaluate. "I think I'm okay." "Do you want to get out of your room? Dad says you've been stuck in here for a while." Yeah, that sounds good." Mom got me ready while Dad hunted down a wheelchair and they loaded me in. The hospital doubled as a construction zone, with the entrance, parking structures, and some floors, including the neuro unit, under remodel. That didn't stop our stroll through the facility. We strode through the long hallways and around several units and clinics. The hospital scenery lacked luster, but the company made up the difference. Their attitudes were contagious. From the moment Mom heard about my diagnosis, she started preparing for a miracle. "It's going to be okay. I feel like everything is going to be all right," she'd said. No hesitation or doubt showed in her voice. Dad's words always showed his can-do personality. "Are you having a great day today?" was his customary greeting. Since I'd been in the hospital, he'd adapted it to, "Hope you are doing well today." When he wasn't sitting in the room with me, he called to make sure I was okay. The first call usually rang around 8 a.m. on his way to the hospital. "Can I bring you anything, Joe?" he'd ask. "Does any fresh fruit sound good? Maybe blueberries or strawberries? I can bring some magazines if you want to read." With every inquiry, he extended an offer meant to help me feel better. We stopped by a window, and Dad took a picture of Mom and me, and then they switched spots. Dad squatted down to be level with me in the wheelchair, gave a big thumbs-up sign, and smiled for the camera. The journey continued onward, yet I couldn't help but notice the people who stared at me as we wandered by. Strangers' eyes focused on me until I tried to meet their gaze. Then they looked away and pretended they hadn't seen me at all. I attempted to smile, to have a little interaction, but too often, I didn't get the chance. We rounded the final corner back to the room and back into my safety bubble. To Mom, Dad, and my loved ones, I was still me. I wondered who or what I was to everyone else. Chapter 17. Demons and Angels. He is a man of courage who does not run away, but remains at his post and fights against the enemy. Socrates. May 28, 2009. He wanted to kill me. I knew that from the moment he slipped into my room. This was no devil's assistant, no inexperienced messenger sent to spook me. The malevolent spirit desired nothing more than my demise. I could not see his form, though a dusky mist seemed to stream in under the door. My enemy did not face me and challenge me to a fair fight. He did not grab a knife to stab me, use a rope, or his hands to strangle me. The evil presence wrapped like a boa constrictor, squeezing the hope out of me. His movements were practiced. With each breath, his grasp tightened. His every attempt was targeted to destroy me. I looked for a glimpse of my adversary, but his body was invisible. The only outward sign of his existence, the mist that dimmed the light in my room. "It's over. Give up now." Shouting through the silence, his words encircled me like a stadium. Jeers and taunts hurled at me from every direction. He was nowhere and everywhere at once. My guide was absent from the room. I struggled, not for breath, but for the conviction to live. The battle raged on, first for seconds, then minutes. My opponent forced the warmth from my heart and the will from my soul. He attempted every ploy and scheme to take me, to make me give up. We both knew if he took my mind, my body would follow. I would die, not from a brain tumor, but from hopelessness. I called silently to God, pleading for rescue. Light emptied from the room until the midday sun became only a shadow. My hands shook as a force gripped my body. Awake and alert, I scanned the room in vain. This was no dream, yet my enemy remained unseen. My breathing raced to keep pace with the unnerving pounding in my chest. "Dear God, please help me. Make him leave, please." The hidden demon sought to crush my spirit and drag me down to hell. I shook under the intensity of its control. I never knew dark powers could be so tangible, so physical. Desolation crushed my chest. The breath slipped out of me. My utter destruction neared. I sent petitions heavenward and prepared for a final showdown with my killer. The serpent twisted tighter. I can't breathe. He's going to win. Without even the strength to look up, I said my last plea. Please, save me. Then the crushing stopped. The dark spirit uncoiled from around me, and the mist fell to the floor. Air filled my lungs, and light brightened the room. Invisible like the demon, I did not see my rescuer's face, though I sensed his presence. Whether my guide or an angel defeated my foe, I did not know. I collapsed into the fetal position and closed my eyes. Without the unseen guardian, I would have lost the duel. God answered the anxious calls of an ordinary woman. No visible guests visited all day. Perhaps that is why the serpent chose that day to creep in. He knew no one would hear my struggles. Lucky for me, the fiend could not overpower the truth my parents had reinforced daily since my childhood. You never have to walk alone. Help is always there when you ask. The day after the devil's serpent slithered out of my room, a friend stopped by to visit. She left me a copy of a book entitled, If Life Were Easy, It Wouldn't Be Hard. I laughed at the truth of the title. The recent, uninvited guest reminded me that there were levels of hard that I couldn't begin to comprehend. That's life, isn't it? It's not supposed to be easy. Guess I'm right on track. Chapter 18. Suspect. We must be known to be understood. Jodi Brown. Covey peeked around the corner. His warm eyes shone through his wire-rimmed glasses, and he smiled when he saw me. Dad hadn't arrived yet, so it had been too quiet. Covey was a welcome sight. Covey and Tolan had been roommates in college 100 years earlier, before marriage, kids, and real life. As a pharmacist, he'd been working at the neighboring hospital, less than a mile away. His presence proved an opportune diversion. They giving you the good stuff in that IV? I'm sure you could give me better, I teased. Despite the darkness of my previous guest, Covey perked me up with his no-nonsense personality and positive attitude. We chatted for several minutes about nothing and everything. Just then, a lady with shoulder-length auburn hair entered. I didn't recognize her, but she wore a hospital badge atop her cream-colored blouse. She gave a tight-lipped grin, which didn't look sincere. Covey raised one eyebrow, and his face told me he got the same uneasy vibe as I did. Jodi Brown? She asked. Yes? Tell me about the pills you've been pocketing. She folded her arms and stared, waiting for an answer. What? What does that mean? What is pocketing pills? I asked. I had no idea what she was talking about, but I didn't like the look she wore on her face. A defensive wall formed around me. I've had reports that you aren't taking your pills, that you remove them from your tray but don't take them, that you are purposefully trying to extend your stay here. Her words punched me with a near knockout blow. My normal calm fled, replaced by a fight-or-flight response. What? You think I want to be here? You think I am choosing this? My voice grew louder and more intense as I spoke. Are you kidding? I have 4 children at home that someone else is caring for. I planned to be in the hospital for 5 days, and now it has been almost 3 weeks. My surgery caused a spinal fluid leak and facial paralysis. I struggle swallowing my pills because my face doesn't work and I nearly choke on every dose. The woman was still looking at me, but her face began to soften. She didn't say anything, and in her pause, I continued. Have you ever tried taking pure salt pills? Add those nasty things to the other 4 to 6 pills they bring in every few hours. Try. See if you can gag one down. I can barely control my mouth enough to swallow regular pills. Then they bring in these monster salt tablets, and you wonder why it's hard for me? My outrage grew with every word I said. Sometimes I retch them up and then swallow again, but I am taking the dang pills. Heat flushed in my face and neck. Who? Who said I was pocketing pills? Which nurse filed that report? I'm not at liberty to say, she stammered. Not at liberty? So someone can accuse me of making myself sick and stealing from the hospital, but you won't even tell me who filed the report. I sat up higher in bed and leaned toward the stranger. Well, you can make sure of one thing. Make sure that nurse is never assigned to my care again. Ever. Anyone who would accuse me of that clearly didn't take enough time to know anything about me and why I am here. I am here because I am trying to live, to go home to my family. You tell that to the nurse and put it in the report. The woman's cheeks reddened. Well, thanks for your time. I will record this and come back and follow up later. She met my eyes and her face softened even more. She knew the truth. She'd walked in accusing me, but walked out understanding me. She left Kobe and me alone again. Tears glossed my eyes. I took deep breaths to catch some air and calm my nerves. Whoa. Sorry about that, Jodi. I can't believe she came in and talked to you like that, Kobe said in a near whisper. You've probably dealt with that stuff before. It is new to me, I said, attempting to rein in my emotions. Yeah, I've heard of patients who pocket pills, but I have never confronted one. Makes me realize it's not an accusation to take lightly, though. Sorry. Thanks. I nodded, still trying to shake it off, but inside, it stung. Kobe stayed for a few more minutes before he looked at his watch and said he needed to get back to work. I thanked him for coming, and he gave me a hug. Half my face smiled, and I hoped it was convincing. When he left, I let my guard down and succumbed to the tears. I ached on the inside, not from pain, but from insult. Shivers electrified my body, and I wanted to crawl under the covers to hide from the world. These people don't know me, and worse yet, some of them don't care. I'm barely even a person to them. I'm just a job, a case number, or report to file. I wondered who'd made the accusation. Memorial Day and the start of summer mixed up schedules, and I'd had 3 new nurses in 2 days. One of the nurses who doesn't know me accused me. That must be it. The others? I thought we'd become friends. Will they believe me or the chart? For over an hour, I tried to convince myself I hadn't done anything to give the nurses the wrong impression. Finally, I quit the internal fight and tried to rest. I couldn't wait for Dr. Coldwell to get back in town. He could operate, seal the leak, and then I could go home and be me again. You ready for Friday night at the movies? Dad dangled a shrink-wrapped DVD of Mall Cop. I thought a little humor would do us both some good. The soundtrack behind the action kept me singing along, despite the sometimes ridiculous plot. Dad's whole body bounced as he chuckled at the one-liners and slapstick moments. His laugh made me laugh. The unrealistic but hilarious light-hearted tale fit the bill for an entertaining evening in. An Eddie Money song played as the end credits rolled. Dad gathered his bag, but waited to eject the DVD until the last notes sounded. Love you, Joe. He leaned over and kissed my forehead. Anything I can do for you before I go? No, this is just what I needed. Think I'm good now. I beamed. Waiting was a bit easier that night. The next afternoon, high-pitched giggles in the hall alerted me to guests. Emily walked in, mahogany locks draping down her back, elongating her tall, model-like frame. Her dentist-white perfect smile lit her whole face. Lovely Lisa followed, with blonde streaks highlighting her long hair and stylish outfit. My church girls. Wendy, Lisa's mom, shadowed close behind. The 3 hurried over and gave me heartfelt hugs. They grabbed the chairs and dragged them closer to my bed. In the 5 weeks since the meeting in my living room, life had spun our worlds in different directions. Lisa's gaze darted from the monitors to the oxygen machine to the IV tower, then back to me. Her mom, usually quiet, broke the ice. We sure miss you at church, especially the girls. Everyone reads your blog. We're all thinking about you. Are you okay today? My head ached and my soul longed for home, but that was not the message I wanted to give my beautiful young visitors. I'm okay, I nodded, hoping they believed the words. Today I've mostly just slept. Stillness lingered. We needed a change of subject. I leaned forward with as much enthusiasm as I could muster. So, tell me about the end of school. You're both seniors now. Oh my gosh, I still can't believe it, Lisa said. The smile spread on her face as she jumped into the details. Her playful grin could be innocent or mischievous. I learned that lesson in a river at girls' camp, when she lured me close, only to drench every inch of me. My classes for next year are going to be so hard, but some of them are just dumb. I am so ready to finish high school. The guys are so immature, she lamented. Yeah, they are, Emily joined in. College guys will be so much better. Despite the adolescent angst in their voices, it warmed my heart that they could still talk to me. The conversation went on for 30 minutes, with playful banter between the girls and wise words of advice and reality sprinkled here and there by Wendy. I encouraged the chat by begging for details and asking more questions. Wendy tapped Lisa on the shoulder. We better be going, she said. If we hurry, we can grab a snack for the road. Many years of mothering had fine-tuned her intuition. A flurry of hugs and goodbyes followed. A bit of sunshine escaped when they exited. Heather, the nurse's aide, entered the room and took my vitals. Looks like that was a fun group of guests, she said, waiting for the machine to get a reading. Ah, your temperature is up again. I'll tell the nurse, but we probably need to treat that. I'll be back in a few. Despite the fever, my gratitude list increased again. The young women who came to visit cared about me more than their own comfort. Who is the teacher now? Chapter 19. Pinned. My mind became uncertain and began to wander. Jodi Brown. The wrestling match began when the sun went down. Exhaustion gripped first, flipped me upside down, and pinned me against the night. Pain grabbed hold and wouldn't let go, tag-teaming with despair to assure victory. The spinal fluid leak and the on-again, off-again fevers created restless days and endless nights. That evening, the ache in my head was worse than usual. Throbbing pressure lunged in and caught me in its clutch. Floundering under the weight, I tapped out the only way I knew how. I pressed the small button, and a saintly referee appeared at my bedside. The night nurse with round pink cheeks and wavy russet hair appeared at my corner with words of encouragement. But she informed me the medications were maxed. No timeouts left. Choking on tears, I sobbed. I'm done. I can't do this anymore. But she did not give up on me so easily. Brenda took my hand as aches racked my body. Minutes ticked on, and agony threatened to consume me, but Brenda held tight and didn't let go. An hour passed, and still the silent saint stood by my bed. With one hand, she caressed my arm and stroked my head. With the other, she held my left hand and never let go. She did not smile, but the corners of her mouth were turned up, and her eyes met mine at every glance. Time slipped slowly away, and desperation with it. I hurt in ways I could not describe to Brenda. Pain played the vigilant opponent, always there, watching for my weaknesses, ready to attack. But that night, my rival did not win. Brenda didn't leave until the match ended. The physical torment remained, but the desperation fled. Brenda's silent support saved me when my own strength did not. By the time the first rays of light peeked through my window, I realized again that angels do not always wear wings or flowing white robes. Sometimes they appear as wrestling coaches or nurses in green scrubs. During my weeks in the hospital, Brenda was my nurse for only one shift, a fact I do not attribute to coincidence. The following day, sleep overshadowed all else. After the doctor's rounds that morning, my CNA came into the room. Heather's short brown hair, full face, and bright smile shined often. She offered both comfort and kindness. I had a bad night. Today I just need to sleep, I explained. Okay, I'll see what I can do to help, she replied. She closed the blinds and clicked off the lights. In the darkened room, I closed my eyes, free of the previous night's attack. The late afternoon sun hid on the other side of the valley. By the time I woke up, I could only see the moving light and growing shadows on the mountain. I'd missed the morning and most of the afternoon. Hungry, I pulled the rolling table near to pick at the food on the tray. A message blinked on my phone. Missed call from Jodi Orgill. Brandon. I grinned at the thought of my brother. Anxious to hear his voice, I listened to the voicemail. Yo, Joe, what's up? Just wanted to see how you are doing. You'd think I would know, but honestly, no one around here seems to know anything we don't read on the blog. Just thought I'd call and tell you I love you and you're beautiful. His words pinned a huge grin like a donkey tail on my face. Oh, Michael just walked in, he said, referring to our younger brother. The scene played in my head. Brandon stood in the kitchen wearing board shorts and a long t-shirt with a green smoothie in one hand and his unsmart phone in the other. Michael entered from the hall, looking to grab the rest of the green drink from the blender, and Brandon motioned toward the phone as he spoke. Want to say anything on the message to Joe? Brandon asked. Yeah. Hi, Michael spit out. Hope you get feeling better. In my mind's eye, Michael's blonde waves looked naturally wind-blown and unkempt, like he was always headed to the beach, or just returned. Anything else? Brandon pressed. Nope, Michael said. Okay, well, that's it for now. Mike and I are heading to Castle, so I'll try you later or check in with Dad to see how you're doing. Love you, Joe. The message clicked off, and I pressed number 9 on the phone keypad. Save. Heading to the beach, of course. Fourth in the family, Brandon juniored me by 9 years. He loved words, reading and writing them, as did I. He tutored others in everything from math to body surfing. Brandon's easygoing nature made people comfortable with him. Best of all, though, Brandon made me feel loved. Whenever I walked into a room, he yelled my name, ran over, picked me up, and bear hugged me. Some people would call that crazy, but Brandon possessed a knack for elevating people to a pedestal level. His voice reminded me of how much I missed him. Michael, the next brother in line, was only 5 years old when I left for college. As he grew, I admired him for his commitment and self-discipline. Within a few years, his dedication to piano began paying off. At age 11, he went on a multi-country tour and played for dignitaries throughout the world. When my family moved to Hawaii after I was married, Michael discovered the ocean. He added a love of surfing to his repertoire. He spent as many hours practicing the piano as paddling on his surfboard. But Michael was never a man of many words. His soul played through the piano keys, and he conversed with the waves. The few words on voicemail were of signature Michael. I replayed the message from my brothers, and their voices filled the room. Just for a minute, they were with me. Charles Dickens got it right. It was the best of times, it was the worst of times. It was the age of wisdom, it was the age of foolishness. While foolishness and ignorance abounded, I experienced the best of times, amidst the worst. Friends and strangers accessorized my troubles with kindness and fashioned a beautiful ensemble. The gratitude tally grew. Aunts who brought love and Olive Garden for dinner. Jeanette and Brenda's visit. Daily texts from my girls. Thoughtful cousins who came by with books and chocolate. Hawaiian friends who sent aloha across the miles. Purple flowers. Dry erase markers and smiley faces on the whiteboard. Clean sheets. The Harry and David package from my childhood friend Michelle. CDs of melodious music. Brittany's sweet letter. House cleaning staff who made my room clean and fresh. My selfless mother who lived at my house and cared for my family. The friendly blonde female resident. Tammy's gift of a journal. A mountain view from my window. Nurses who became my friends. Kelly's homemade cookies and fresh strawberries. A visit from Randy and Bishop Ulrich. Aunt Deanne and Uncle Steve, who stayed after visiting hours were over. Low pain days. Walks out of the neuro unit. A bathroom only 10 feet from my bed. Tolan skipping lunch to be with me. Background music and clean bedding had never been amenities to me before, just routine. I wondered how many little conveniences and acts of love I'd missed acknowledging over time, and promised myself to do better at seeing. Chapter 20. Continental Divide. Some gulfs are too wide to cross by bridge. Those require a leap of faith. Jodi Brown. May 28, 2009. The light at 1 a.m. interrupted my dreams of home. I could feel the light before I opened my eyes. The man didn't look familiar. He wasn't one of my regular neuro nurses. I couldn't imagine why he appeared in the middle of the night. "Ms. Brown," he said, "the doctors are concerned because your sodium level is low. They instructed us to give you a sodium infusion." "Okay," I replied, yawning. Another unknown man in scrubs came into my room with a cart of supplies. He approached me while the first guy fiddled with items on the cart. "So, I hate to say it, but this isn't going to be fun. We are going to inject sodium into your veins to regulate your levels, but it is gritty and thick, so we can't put it in your IV. We have to use this." The guy grabbed a giant syringe akin to a turkey baster. "I've heard from other patients that it's not just the needle that hurts. The sodium stings, so you will feel intense heat in your arm." "Lovely," I replied, "just what I wanted." Used to similar drills, I turned my arm and pumped my fist so they could find a vein. The point pierced my skin, the prick worse than expected, and much worse than a normal syringe. "Shoot," he said as he grabbed a bandage and pressed it against my arm. "That vein blew. I'm going to have to do it again." He cleaned another spot and pricked me again. "Dang," the needleman said. "Blew another one." I forced myself to breathe and stay calm. "Sorry, this is a large gauge needle and you have a small arm and tiny veins. Last try, I promise," he said as he applied another bandage. He moved the antiseptic cloth and wiped farther down my arm. The coolness caused goosebumps over my body. My skin broke under the pressure of the syringe. He closed his eyes and shook his head. "3 strikes. I'm out. Sorry." He stepped away from the bed and lowered his gaze. I clenched my teeth and the muscles throughout my body tightened. 3 Band-Aids covered the pincushion on my right arm. The next anonymous man at bat looked right at me, his eyes peering into mine. "I'll do my best. Sorry about this." I nodded. The puncture was slower this time, at a different angle, but the result was the same. "Damn!" The word came, not from the guy holding the needle, but from the other nurse who'd already struck out. I was running out of veins. And patience. "Okay, guys, I know you are doing your job, but I am not playing this game all night. You can train on someone else. Last time. Period." I looked at each of them so they knew I meant it. Both nodded. The syringe in hand, the nurse let out a long, slow breath. "Make another fist for me." I didn't breathe. This time, the needle slid into my arm. Whew. He pressed the head of the syringe and pushed the thick solution through. The sodium hit my veins, at first with a hot, prickly sensation. But the heat didn't stop. It rose at lift-off speed. The irritation spread from the middle of my forearm, into my hand and up into the shoulder. Within seconds, fire seared through my entire arm. "Oh," I moaned and bit my lip. "It's burning," he stated more than asked. Tears slipped from my eye. "How long does it take?" "I have to empty this entire syringe." He motioned at the pointer sticking out of my arm. "The sodium solution is dense, so I have to go slowly, or your vein could still burst." After more than a minute, the giant plunger still appeared full. I turned my head, cried out loud, and started to shake. "Hold still! You gotta hold still!" he urged. Nowhere to go, no escape. The blaze intensified and radiated into my chest. The sweltering heat threatened to burst through my skin. "The sodium is all in. Now." He finished and slipped the syringe out of my arm. When the last clumps of sodium pushed through, I checked the clock. More than an hour had passed since the first pinprick. Nearly 90 minutes since I'd been jolted out of sleep. "It's over," I moaned. "Well, the heat may still last a while. Maybe another hour or more," he said. "An hour?" A gasp escaped before I could stop it. "For some people it's that long," syringe man number 1 said. The 2 young men gathered the supplies and used rags and put everything back in place. Several minutes later, they left for good. The nightmare ended, but the ghost burn still haunted me. The fire extinguished about 3:30 in the morning. Just as I drifted off to sleep, a CNA entered the room to check my vitals, followed by the regular phlebotomist, who came to do the daily blood draw just 30 minutes later. At 6 a.m., the night shift finished. The day nurse entered my room and brought with her 3 sodium tablets, along with 4 other medications for me to take. "Enough of the salt! I'm going to be sick," I said. The nurse insisted the tablets were still on my list of prescriptions. "I can't take them. Not right now," I replied. I took the rest of the pills, but left the giant doses of salt in their paper cup. She carried them out when she left the room. By the time Dad called to check on me at 8 a.m., I had neared my breaking point. I explained the whole night ordeal over the phone. When he arrived, he took one look at me and walked to the nurse's station to inquire about the sodium infusion. I checked her file and the chart doesn't show who ordered the sodium infusion. The nurse manager from the night shift didn't know either. "I can find out and let you know," she said. No answers. We never discovered who ordered the nighttime infusion or what information the order was based on. Dad seemed frustrated that day, an unusual state considering his normal calm and composed demeanor. The unanswered questions, endless pins, pokes, and procedures seemed to weigh heavily on both of us. He opened his laptop and tried to get some work done while I rested. "You still here?" I asked as I awoke a few hours later. "Of course. Where else would I be?" No fire or sodium could burn away the feeling that pounded in my heart when I looked at him. Where else would he be? I wondered. He was wanted everywhere, but he stayed with me. "Are you ready to forget about sodium infusions?" I nodded. "All righty, there are dozens more comments on your blog since I wrote about your all-night salt adventure. These ought to make you smile," he said, smiling already. He read notes from Carol and Debbie and laughed out loud before going on. "This one's from Pam, that I used to work with." He could hardly keep a straight face. "Oh my goodness, forget waterboarding terrorists. Give them sodium infusions. Jodi, honestly, you have to be a saint. I would be screaming and clobbering people, and maybe I would even spit and call them very bad names. It's true. Ask your dad. God love you. Get well." Sodium infusions for terrorists? That may be the best idea I've heard in a long time. I laughed. It sounded so funny when he read it. Here's one from Brittany. "Sounds like she was here last night?" he asked. Was that just last night? Sheesh, I almost forgot. "Okay, so I left you last night thinking you were going to get a restful night's sleep. I am so sorry that didn't happen, and even more sorry for what you had to endure with all the sodium intakes. Do they not think sleep is more important for you or what? Hang in there, my friend, and I pray for a better day and night today. Get some rest, if that is possible." He finished Brittany's note, and his laughter filled the room again, turning his cheeks red. "Oh, I love this one, and I think you will too. It's from Annette," he said, trying to contain his amusement. "Jodi, as I thought about you today, I have thought of a few positive things that have come out of this whole experience. 1. You haven't had to plan dinner. 2. You have been able to live on the east bench of Salt Lake. 3. No house cleaning. 4. Your question mark scar would make a great costume of the Riddler. 5. Hospital ice chips. The best. 6. You haven't had to wake up and think, what should I wear today? 7. You are lucky enough to know what a sodium infusion is. Most of us don't. 8. You've realized how many people love and care for you. 9. You have seen miracles. 10. Testimonies have grown because of your experience. I love you, Jodi, and I hope you are smiling. Love, Annette." Annette was right. The comment made me smile. The kind notes and heartfelt comments kept coming. Friends rode along with me through the frustration and battles. By evening, Dad and I fared better than we had that morning. Tolan left work early and joined us. "We've been stuck in this room all day. Let's go for a walk." "You up for it?" Dad asked. "Yep." "Okay, you think you can walk for a minute or should we get a wheelchair?" "Walk, at least until my head gets bad. I've hardly moved all day." Just as we readied to walk out the door, Susie stuck her head in. Still in scrubs from her shift at the neighboring children's hospital, she popped in to say hello. "Want to walk with us, Susie Q?" I asked. I sure do. She turned right around and we left the neuro unit. Arms locked with Dad on my right and Tolan on my left, I felt like Dorothy venturing to Oz with her faithful companions by her side. Susie walked next to Dad and dragged my IV tower along. The journey progressed slowly, with no singing or dancing to the Emerald City, but the company and activity wakened my body. Let's go to the bridge and walk over to the other hospital. Maybe that cafeteria has different food, Dad suggested. Yes, they do. I can tell you which are the best treats. Susie's grin said she might indulge in a treat herself. We crossed the lengthy bridge. Tolan grabbed the handle of the double door at the end, but an alarm beeped and the door didn't move. Wonder if the bridge is only open during business hours, he said. Oh, shoot, I don't have my badge, Susie said. It would open the door. Well, we'll have to go back and get a milkshake, I guess, Dad said. Does a milkshake sound good to you, Joe? Sounds great. I lied. My paralyzed taste buds despise dairy, but if Dad needed a milkshake, I would join him. Back at the other end of the bridge, Dad took his turn to open the door. The same noise sounded and the door didn't budge. You gotta be kidding me, Dad laughed. So we could open the door to get on the bridge, but not off? The walk halted for a minute and I leaned against the glassed walls of the corridor. Dad started making distress calls on his cell. Tolan, Susie, and I chatted during the wait. Between calls, Dad snapped a few pictures, so I posed against the glass in my sexy hospital gown, holding on to the IV tower. Looking good, Joe, Dad laughed. Okay, I'm gonna try the nurse's station again. I sat on the floor and leaned back to prevent an explosion in my head. Well, no one is answering at the nurse's station or at the main neuro line, Dad said. Shift change, that's why I just got off work, Susie said. Could be a while before everyone gets their orders for the night. Dad shook his head and scoffed. Jeez. Alrighty, I guess we'll all have a seat and enjoy the view until we can get back in. And so we did. Until my IV tower beeped. Susie looked at the screen on the machine. Battery's almost dead. These don't last very long when they aren't plugged in. Dad dialed numbers on his phone again. I hoped it wasn't 911. Tolan stood up and I thought he was going to bang on the door, but he walked in the wrong direction. Here it is. Tolan pointed low on the wall. I knew I saw an outlet. I didn't know how he noticed an outlet in the hall, but I also didn't understand how he always knew which way was north, even inside a building. His brain clearly worked differently than mine. We migrated to the outlet and Susie plugged in the machine. Dad didn't sit. He paced the hall and kept trying different numbers. The invisible glass wall created a perfect view of the mountain peak to the east and the Salt Lake Valley to the west. Well, hello, Dad spoke into the phone. It's great to reach a live person. My name is Jodi Orgill, and my daughter, Jodi Brown, is a patient on the neuro floor. We went on a walk, and somehow we are now trapped on the bridge between the two hospitals. We got in, but couldn't get out. Her IV machine is dying, and we need someone to come rescue us. I wish I could have seen the look on the phone operator's face. Hey, thank you very much. We appreciate it, Dad exclaimed, and then turned to us. Okay, a nurse is coming. Well, we won't forget this walk, Tolan said. As incredible as the view was, the scenario seemed even more so. The humor of it hit us, and we laughed as we waited on the floor. 10 minutes later, a nurse opened the door, and we journeyed back to Kansas. The sodium infusion melted into memory, but the bridge escapade would last a lifetime. We'd learned a number of things since the children's first visits to the hospital. The smells, sights, and sounds of the neuro unit were not as welcoming as labor and delivery, the only other area of the hospital my children had ever visited. Unlike visiting mommy after having a baby, no newborn prize awaited. Patients in the neuro unit wore bandages and scars instead of diapers. The extreme quiet could terrify anyone. Creative parent mode kicked in. Saturday evening, I called the CNA to warn her of the coming attraction. Mom, we brought popcorn and a movie! Kaysen squealed as he ran. He hopped on my bed and hugged me. The rest followed, and even Davin crawled up and laid his head on my chest. I'd never been so happy to be sandwiched between my boys. Tolan took the microwavable popcorn and promised to return with movie-ready treats. Trendon loaded the DVD into the player and then closed the blinds to dim the light. Tolan arrived just in time for the opening music. We squished together for the family movie night. Popcorn disappeared at record speed, and soda refills, normally not available in the Brown home, kept the kids stocked and stoked. David and Kaysen crawled on and off the bed, but always returned to my lap. When the cartoon ended, the room rivaled a theater after the feature show. Buttery popcorn smeared on every surface, sticky soda on the floor, and the bright faces of 6 happy customers. What a glorious mess. "I love your face," I whispered as my sweet ones each hugged me goodbye. That night, I meant the words, perhaps more than ever before. The crowd dispersed. I lowered my bed and rolled over until something poked my side. Popcorn kernels, popped and unpopped, reminded me that I was the luckiest woman alive. The quiet Sunday morning brightened when the University of Utah students stopped by to visit. They asked for an update on my condition and shared a message. "This quote is from Melanie Beatty," Lainey said. "Gratitude unlocks the fullness of life. It turns what we have into enough and more. It turns denial into acceptance, chaos to order, confusion to clarity. It can turn a meal into a feast, a house into a home, a stranger into a friend." I'd never heard that quote before, but I loved it. I thought you might too. She was right. I loved it and added the 4 visitors to my gratitude list. I hoped every patient enjoyed such caring visitors. The young couples offered to pray for me and my upcoming surgery. "Absolutely. I'd be honored," I replied to the strangers who'd become my friends. May 31st, 2009. Dr. Coldwell startled me when he entered my room Sunday evening. He wasn't scheduled to return until Monday. "There's no need to wait until Tuesday. Let's move ahead and prepare for surgery tomorrow." "That's 1 day sooner I'll be able to go home." He methodically flipped through my chart and talked to the nurses. His careful actions reminded me of the words he'd spoken to me on the phone the week after my diagnosis. "We are in this together now. I am going to help you get through it. I am not going to leave you alone." His face showed his promise remained intact. So many doctors had given up, but he persevered. His presence meant progress and hope. Dr. Coldwell and Dr. Shelton were unassuming, caring, and genuine. Though I knew them only as doctors, I loved them for the peace they gave my family. The surgery would take place in steps. The stages included harvesting fat from my thigh and stomach, and later using the tissue to fill the holes in my brain. The holes where spinal fluid may have been leaking out. Tolan and I compared the process to waxing skis, smoothing out all of the dings with the heavy wax. The fat collection methods were sure to leave scars and create additional pain, but if it sealed the leak, it would be worth it. The new plan provided welcome relief from the waiting. I called home with the news. That night, Dad phoned in and read me some of the blog comments to buoy me for the big surgery day ahead. Here's a short one from Susie. "I love you so much, Jodi. I'll be able to come to rub your legs next week, and I'll bring my badge, just in case." "I think you should take her up on that offer," Dad left. Here's one you won't want to miss. "Jodi, hun, your Virginia pals are still praying and watching out for you. Keep on going. It may seem like 2 steps forward, 1 step back right now, but soon you will be walking forward out of that hospital. Much love to you and your family. Stephanie Thornton Grant." Her name evoked powerful emotions from my childhood. Virginia had been my home during most of my growing up years. From preschool through 10th grade, my days were spent in the still rural hills of Northern Virginia, an oasis from the hustle and bustle of the nation's capital. The town of Warrenton ingrained itself into every part of my being, as did my friends from childhood. The sweltering, humid summer days meant long hours at the pool and retreats in the woods behind my house. I was one of the guys in my neighborhood full of boys. That was okay with me, because it meant riding at the bike jumps with Brant and Jeff, jumping on the trampoline, and trips to 7-Eleven with Aaron, Trevor, and Peter, forest exploits with Josh, and midnight adventures with all of them. Together, they crafted the backstory of my youth. We did dumb things kids couldn't get away with now, all in the name of fun. Our lives intertwined 1,000 times and created a million memories. Indeed, my Virginia friends pulled their weight in keeping me positive. The note from Stephanie had whisked me away from the hospital and back into a world where I was safe, secure, and one of the gang. Your Warrenton friends are really on this weekend. Your mom said you got another care package from Tammy Sutherland yesterday. I'll bring it tomorrow so you can have a pick-me-up after surgery, Dad said. Tammy Sutherland. In my cruel junior high school years, most of my friends, including Tammy, abandoned me one summer because I unknowingly liked the same boy another girl crushed on. The coup d'etat occurred quietly, behind closed doors. Not so much of a hint escaped their mouths. The discovery came when I called one of my best friends and heard a pool party in the background. A party I hadn't been invited to. Confusion set in first, followed quickly by hurt and anger. At the time, my crush crime had not been announced to me. I didn't know why I suddenly had no friends. I only knew that everything in my young world changed in an instant. Boys rarely involved themselves in such petty discords, but even some of my guy friends chose the popular girls' side. I hadn't asked them to choose me. I had thought we were all on the same side. When school started, I found myself utterly alone and friendless, and fairly clueless as to why. At cheerleading, the girls practiced with their backs to me. At lunch, I sat alone. At home, I cried and begged my mother to let me switch schools. The torture was too great. My mother possessed more sense than me and said I was staying put. Days into the new school year, I noticed I was not the only one dining alone. So I sat myself next to the new girl with the coffee-colored, slightly frizzy hair. Her striking features differed from most of my classmates. I wondered if I should know where she was from. Nicole Malik, I discovered, was American with Greek ancestry. Her bright intellect and jovial personality drew me to her. Together, we attracted and sought out others. Soon, friends surrounded me again, and the teenage angst lessened. My guy friends quickly returned, having no real knowledge of why they left in the first place. The girls, however, didn't speak to me or even look my direction for months. Then there was Tammy. The piece of notebook paper covered in blue ink arrived in my locker. I undid the near origami folds and saw handwritten scrawls covering the page. Details poured out, and I read them over and over again, always focusing on the first line, "I'm sorry," and the last, "Please forgive me." Sunday school teachers sermoned about forgiveness, but it had never been tangible to me. Of course, my mom made me sit in a room with my sisters until we could stop fighting, apologize, and forgive each other. But that was scripted. Tammy's apology was real, and so were the effects. Our bond grew as she invited me to activities and parties. We hung out at school and on weekends, which led to years of genuine, sweet, past-the-test friendship. "I am still amazed by Tammy, and everyone," I said to Dad. "I feel like I have to get better, for them." "And you will, Joe. You will," he said. Dad couldn't see my watery eyes through the phone line, but he didn't need to. His own tears joined mine, and together they mingled with our memories of the town and people we loved, half a continent away. Chapter 21. The Purpose of My Path. At some point in time, we all have to choose whether our wounds will define us or refine us. Jodi Brown. June 1st, 2009. A searing heat sliced through my head, as if lightning had struck. My eyes shot open. Too much pain. I shouldn't be awake yet. The procedure must not be over. Oh my gosh, close your eyes, go back to sleep. Jodi. Jodi. Hushed voices urged me to wake. Anesthesia still tingled in my veins. Rest was the only answer for the weight on my eyelids and the burning in my skull. Minutes and hours seemed interchangeable. I woke again, the overhead lights dim. A huddle of people stood at the other end of the room. A nurse in blue scrubs was talking. Her lips moved fast and she pointed toward me. She wore a ponytail, but wisps of hair fell around her face. Her eyes looked puffy, like she was ready for a long shift to end. Her nods and hand gestures made me think she was updating my family on my condition. I listened, but heard only garbled sounds. A bolt pierced my brain, and my muscles tensed under the sheets. Panicked, I searched the room for Tolan. He was there. He was always there. His brown eyes found mine. He hurried to my side and held my hand, but even his touch didn't provide the relief I needed. Something must be wrong. The meds shouldn't have worn off already. I blinked again and forced the blurriness away. Focus. My mind raced through the catalog of memories from my first brain surgery, searching for what was out of place. The oxygen machine beat softly, like a rhythmic drum, and when accompanied by the steady beep, beep, beep of the heart rate monitor, the harmony was not only tolerant, but comforting. The smell of ammonia stung my nose, sterile, but strong. Bright green numbers flashed my vitals on a screen near my bed. Cords dangled from the IV tower, twisted in a mass of confusion, rushing fluids into my body. It was all familiar. Everything but the excruciating pain. A hand gently rubbed my leg. Her dark hair, small frame, and huge smile greeted me. Mom. Dad neared my bed, seeming larger than life. I saw their expectant expressions. I supposed they wanted to know if I was okay. Instead of responding, I turned away and tried to shut out the world. My head, was all I managed to utter. Had the doctors pounded spikes into my skull? One more crash of the mallet, and my head would surely split. Hi, sweetie. You really hurting? Tolan asked. I nodded, grateful for the declaration I didn't have to make. He turned to the nurse, who was writing on a clipboard. She's awake and in a lot of pain. Can you get her something, fast? They exchanged few brief words, and she left. Hold on for a few more minutes. It will get better soon, Joe. Dad's words soothed and reassured me. Mom pulled at the matted hair stuck to my face. Half a head of hair still left plenty of strands to get tangled during hours of medicated unconsciousness. With each passing minute, the agony increased. Tolan disappeared from the room. I could easily visualize him pressing the nurse to hurry the process along. The restrained sounds of the neurointensive care unit became louder and more intense. Voices amplified, and low whispers became high-pitched sentences with question mark endings. Tolan returned, flushed with his brow furrowed. Something was definitely wrong. He spoke to my parents, but did not include me in the conversation. He glanced my way, but only motioned to my figure in the bed. Then Mom and Dad scurried out. He approached, and I begged Tolan for answers. Your surgery didn't finish until late, and the doctors have gone home for the night, but no one input medication orders into the computer before they left. He paused. The nurses know you need painkiller, but they can't give it to you without a prescription from a doctor. What time is it now? Just after 8. We're still working on it. Sorry. Tolan squeezed my hand. Tears trickled down my face as my family continued to plead for my relief. The staff could not override the system. Desperate calls were placed to the doctor, but still I waited, hour after hour. Heat seemed to radiate from Tolan as he tried repeatedly to get anyone to right the wrong in the system. Mom's face wrinkled, her hands frequently brushing my forehead and stroking my cheeks. Dad stayed calm, but insistent as he vanished from the room every few minutes. By the time the nurses brought the prescription, nearly 4 hours had passed since I'd first woken from surgery. The critical care nurse walked into the room with unwanted instructions. I know you want to stay, but the unit is normally closed to visitors at this time of night. Now that Jodi has meds, she will be fine. And you have to go, she explained. Can we at least stay until we know she is okay? Mom petitioned the nurse. She shook her head. Hospital rules. Sorry. She said she was sorry, but she didn't look it. She turned and walked out of the room, her large frame and heavy steps emphasizing that she was a rule enforcer. Tolan's face tightened. I'm not leaving. I don't care what she says, he declared. My parents seemed unsure of what to do. Mom had planned to stay the night with me, but the nurse clearly denied her wish. They began gathering their belongings. We love you, Joe. We'll be praying for you constantly. If anything happens, or if you need anything, call my cell, Dad said. They took turns leaning over the bed rail to hug me. I wanted to assure them I was okay, but I couldn't yet. They waved as they left. Toland's determination kicked in, and he moved quickly through the room. He grabbed the few items he'd brought for the long day of waiting and piled them into his laptop bag. The nurse's feet shuffled outside the door. Toland grabbed his bag and stepped quietly behind the floor-length privacy curtain that split the room in half. I glanced around, but there was no visible signs that Toland hid in the room. In seconds, the nurse re-entered. She walked to the bed and watched the blood pressure cuff on my left arm inflate. She recorded the results, turned, and walked past the edge of the bed. She grabbed the curtain's edge and pulled it across the ceiling track until it hit the wall. "You have to go. Now." She stared him down. "I'll call security if I have to." I could see the rise and fall of Toland's chest. He narrowed his eyes and gave her a look I'd never seen. His internal debate etched on his face. He wasn't known to be a rule follower, especially when the rules didn't make sense. But the nurse's beady eyes, square shoulders, and hands on hips told us she wasn't wavering. Toland picked up his bag and walked to me. "I tried," he whispered. "I won't be gone long. I'll be back first thing in the morning." He held my hand and kissed my forehead. "Hopefully, the boss will be gone by then." "Sorry you feel so crummy. I love you." His shoulders sagged as he walked out of the room, defeated. I wanted to yell at the nurse for turning him away, but I did nothing. She walked around and checked various monitors and cords. Satisfied, she went toward the door. "You should get some relief soon. I'm going on break, so my replacement will check on you in a while. If you need anything, you know what to do." She pointed to the 3 emergency call buttons near my bed. When the medication streamed through my veins, reprieve began, pulling me away from the brink of madness. I lay in bed, mentally and physically scarred, but rest eluding me. Without warning, my body jumped, jolted by a horrible sound coming from down the hall. A young man howled as though his life were being stripped away. It started suddenly, like he'd been wheeled through the doors of an emergency room, but it did not end suddenly. Silence is deafening in the critical care unit, but silence surpasses screams. His shrieks pitched and moaned, a boat creaking through a fatal storm. His anguish cried out constantly, with no more than a breath's break in between. I imagined his body arching, seized with pain. I tried to picture something else, anything else, but the eerie screeches chased away all other thoughts. As much as my own pain haunted me, these terrifying sobs shook me even more. Despite the urgency of my situation only 90 minutes earlier, no one came to check on me. I pressed the call button and waited, but my calls went unanswered. Without a response, I continued to press the button, again and again. A woman in green scrubs finally appeared. "Are you okay?" she inquired, breathless. I was doing better when the meds kicked in, but then the screaming started," I admitted. I asked what horrifying scene unfolded outside my door. She tucked her wavy, cherry hair behind her ear and breathed a long, heavy sigh. "Let's just say it was a beautiful night for a motorcycle ride, but some people choose not to wear helmets." My eyes grew wide at her response. "If you are all right, I really need to get back to help," she said. I nodded. Those were the only words I ever heard on the topic. The rest of the night, I lay awake and listened to the screams as doctors raked rubble and rocks from his brain. The dark age passed, and the yelling finally stopped. The quiet haunted me more than the screams. Despite a second dose of medications, sleep continued to elude me. Each clock tick aroused a greater sense of anticipation. How would the stranger feel when he realized a simple choice nearly cost him his life? Or would he even live long enough to regret his decision? My heart rate machine beeped faster. Tears welled up, the dam about to burst. Weeks of frustration, of fighting for life, spilled out in waves of sobs. The night dragged on and dragged me with it. My mind held me hostage until finally I gave up fighting the insomnia. I laced my hands at my chest and just prayed he would live. Chapter 22. No Way Back. I've journeyed farther down the road than I ever thought I would. I've seen things I never thought I'd see. Can't turn around now, even if I wanted to. Jodi Brown. The second brain surgery did not magically end my life and death struggle as I had hoped, but the haunting night transformed my built-up frustration and pain into purpose. The motorcyclist reminded me that all actions have consequences, many times unintended ones. I decided to be more deliberate with my decisions, starting with my health. Sadly, my body missed the memo. No physical change mimicked my mental one. No matter how much I willed my body to do, I did not improve. We waited again to see if the cerebrospinal fluid leak sealed successfully. My family hoped, and the doctors predicted the procedure had remedied the problem. A doctor opened the lumbar drain again to track the fluid output. Interpreting data on the daily outtake would determine whether fluid still leaked in my brain. Waiting hurt. Dad had long since formed a routine. Each day after he arrived, at lunch, and then again before he left, he read me the notes from the blog. In between, he worked on his laptop and watched over me. That day, I needed the messages more than usual. Wow, Jodi, you just continue along, tougher than ever. One thing I noticed is how incredibly beautiful you still are through all of this. It's wonderful to see the love you have for your children. Photos of you with them made me cry. And the beautiful smile that you continue to share. You are an inspiration to me. Actually, you've been an inspiration to my whole family. Hang in there, my friend. We will continue to keep you in our prayers and hope that things will continue to heal properly. Michelle Bocchino. I pictured her beautiful family and tried to sit up a little for Michelle. Oh, here's one from Cammie Davis. The love and excitement came through in Dad's sing-songy voice as he said her name. Jodi, don't ever doubt how amazing you are. You truly are beautiful inside and out. The Davis family is continuing to pray and fast for you and your family. We love you. Keep on looking forward to a bright and happy future. This will pass. Love you, Cammie Davis. I don't feel amazing right now, but Cammie would never lie. I grinned at Dad. By day's end, chunky fluid spewed from my mouth and nose until nausea medication quelled the waves of retching. But that didn't calm my head. A piercing agony pounded in my skull. After a full workday by my side, Dad left for the night. Tolan arrived shortly after Dad departed. They had a good system. He first stood by my bed, then sat, and finally he lay in the recliner. No one in the acute care unit kicked him out, so he stayed with me through much of that terrible night. He held my hand, ran his fingers through my hair, and rubbed my back, but sadly, he could do nothing to cure me. He left sometime before I woke the next morning. His call was the first thing to alert me that he'd gone. Hi, Hen. I'm on my way to work. Is your dad there yet? He asked. With only a few hours of highly interrupted sleep, I couldn't imagine how he still managed to go to work. Not yet, but he called and said he's on his way. Mom is coming with him. Good. I'm glad they will be there with you. I left between 1:30 and 2 a.m. I can never sleep in hospitals. I finally gave up and went home. Are you any better today? I could not lie. Not to Tolan. No, you're not, he said. The hospital telephone rang, an infrequent occurrence since most people called my cell phone. Hello? Hey, Jodi, the caller said, his accent a unique blend of Southern drawl and Eastern education. I recognized his deep voice and deliberate speech from his first word. This is Brad. He drew out the A, as usual, so his name sounded more like Brad than Brad. I smiled at that. Who is it? Mom inquired, her eyebrows drawn in suspicion. It's Brad White. I clarified to differentiate between him and my cousin Brad, as my excitement was great at hearing from either. Hi, how are you? The words rushed from my mouth. Me? He chuckled. How are you? I pictured Brad as if he stood in front of me. Tall, with broad shoulders, he modeled the same smoky brown hair he'd had since kindergarten, though it had gone through varying lengths and styles over the years. He'd grown it out the minute we graduated high school, something he hadn't done earlier out of obedience and respect for his parents. His ponytail outlasted roommates, girlfriends, apartments, and other phases of life. But in the vision in my room, his short hair fell haphazardly across his forehead. He looked handsome without trying, because he was Brad, and never pretended to be anyone else. Different as night and day, Brad and I became close when everyone in elementary school clicked. When junior high threatened to separate all of us, we sorted through the crowds and the new kids and fought to stay friends. By high school, we cemented our friendship. Brad starred as my first date, my prom date, my confidant, and best friend. We shared a locker and hung out after Friday night football games, as long as neither of us was dating someone else at that moment. Our relationship was natural and easy, yet complex. I've been reading the blog. Man, sounds like you've been through hell already. I think if I were there, I'd have busted you out by now, he declared. If you come bust me out, I might just leave. He laughed, and so did I. The chit-chat continued until a natural pause in the conversation. We hesitated, and I knew why. Time had a way of passing too quickly, and it could be years before we spoke again. Amongst our goodbyes, we uttered promises we knew we wouldn't keep. 1 phone call, 10 minutes, enough to give me hope for the day. Despair reeked. The acrid aroma stemmed from a combination of sterile cleaners and latex gloves mixed with open wounds, sweat, and urine. Worse than normal hospital smells, despair was both undeniable and unforgettable. Daily mopping and changing sheets didn't make a difference when the diagnosis was despair. No amount of washing could remove the pungent odors of lost hope. The mannequins occupying the rooms of despair stared at the TV or at blank hospital walls for hours on end. Their faces didn't change, even when the show did. Tolan pushed my wheelchair past an open door, and I witnessed despair's treachery firsthand. Mummy bandages coiled her head, like mine, but no living emotion showed in her eyes or face. I knew that emptiness. I'd had to leave the world and dive into myself at times just to survive. But I imagined my experience didn't look like hers. I watched her for several days, looking in every time I passed. Did her solitude cause the despair, or did the despair drive guests away? My large family's strong social network meant many guests visited as tribute to my parents more than me. But my neuro unit neighbor remained alone. Whether it was because of proximity or circumstances was unclear, but as I waved and smiled at her, her eyes turned away, and a negative feeling hit me in the chest. She invited no kindness, even from a fellow sufferer. The longer I was hospitalized, the more instances of despair I saw. When I looked in these rooms, my gut ached. I passed them again and again, but never stopped. The next morning, a tall girl with long brown hair pulled into a stringy ponytail tromped toward my bed. "I'm here to shower you," she announced. She hadn't even told me her name. You can't get me up. My head." "I know. The nurse manager brought over a shower bed to use." A man in scrubs appeared and pushed a thin foam and plastic mattress on wheels into the room. Together they lifted me onto the cool, slick surface, and then the girl taped plastic bags over the IVs stringing from my arm. The man rolled the shower bed, and the girl dragged the IV tower alongside. We entered a large bathing room, not a bathroom. There was no toilet, only a large bathtub and gangly pipes with a variety of different shower heads. The cold, tiled room sent goosebumps popping up all over my body. The man left and closed the door. The ponytailed girl turned on the faucet, and water sprayed through a long hose and out the shower head. She let the water hit the wall as she unsnapped my gown and tossed it to the floor. Next, she went to the bottom of the bed and tugged my underwear down my legs and into a bag. I lay naked on the plastic bed, shivering. Without a word or even a towel to cover me, she grabbed the hose and sprayed. The water streamed only enough to shower a little of me at a time, yet my whole body lay exposed. I shuddered in the cool air. Her movements were mechanical, as if at a car wash. My dignity spiraled down the drain with the rushing water. I wanted to curl up in a ball, to cover and protect myself, but I didn't. Instead, I shut my eyes and tried to ward off the humiliation and splashing water. Too weak to move or even talk, I just lay there and quivered. She hung up the water hose, grabbed a stick with a loofah on the end, and pumped foamy soap out of a bottle and dripped it onto my bare skin. She pushed the soap around with the loofah brush, but never personally touched me in the process. She sprayed me again, and the water streamed off my torso. Then she aimed the hose at my hips and legs. I folded my arms over my chest. Can I get a towel?" She stopped, and a humph escaped her mouth. She dropped the hose and crossed the room, grabbed a single towel, walked back, and tossed it to me. I took the towel and tried to wrap the upper half of my body. Cool water pooled under my back, but at least part of me was covered. A few minutes later, the water stopped, and she dried her own hands, then got another towel for me. I attempted to maneuver the towel around the rest of my body, but the IV tethered me in place. She grabbed the towel, unfolded it, and laid it over me. The door opened and the same man walked in and pushed the bed to my room. He helped her lift my toweled body to the bed, and he left again. The girl closed the door and grabbed my underwear from a drawer. I was still trying to dry off when she slid the clothes over my wet limbs. I hurried to dry my torso so my gown wouldn't also be wet. She peeled the tape and plastic bags off my IV, then snapped the gown around my neck. It may as well have been a noose. The process took about 15 minutes, and the girl had said nothing from the time she announced she was going to shower me. She tromped out just as she came. My soaking hair drenched the pillow. My underclothing stuck to me. The bedding had been changed, and I scooted underneath, but still shivered inside the covers. Without my dignity, I was nothing. "Can we weigh her?" Mom asked the nurse. "She is looking tinier every day, and she wasn't big to begin with." "Yes, of course." I glanced at my body. Bones pushed through my thin skin, creating gaunt hands. No wonder she worried. The nurse reset the scale on the side of the bed. I didn't even have to move to get an answer. She's dropped below 100 pounds. That's not good." My mom shook her head. Clearly, she had already known. The nurse increased the IV fluids to keep me from dehydrating. "If the leak is sealed, you'll be able to go home within a few days." The doctor's words from a week earlier reverberated in my mind, taunting me. I tried to focus on willing my body to heal the spinal fluid leak, but I had no energy left to apply to the task. Something stirred within me, beyond the leak, which zapped me of any remaining strength. Pain highways branched from my head into my neck and shoulders. Muscles hardened in place, stiffening like a corpse. When the doctors did their rounds, I listed my new symptoms. Almost hourly, the catalog grew. Tolan took his shift at my bedside. Dr. Shelton checked on me and told him to watch for spinal meningitis, a dangerous possibility after tinkering with the brain. Tolan asked what indications to look for. As the doctor ticked off the list, I shuddered. After Dr. Shelton left, I rifled through the list again. "Tolan, I have spinal meningitis. That's what it is. It has to be," I whispered. Anything more required too much energy. "You have to tell them." By the doctor's next visit, half my body was rigid. A slow progression of death disengaged my muscles and organs. I breathed relief when the doctors tested for spinal meningitis. The test usually requires a spinal tap, but with a lumbar drain already in place, a simple fluid sample was sent to the lab. Finally, an easy test. I silently begged for a positive result. At least then, the enemy would be known. Another day heightened the nausea and tightened my limbs. The energetic blonde female resident entered. She grinned, but with only half a smile. "Well, the good news is you don't have spinal meningitis. That one is a bugger, so we can be glad about that." I closed my eyes, waiting for the waves to drown me. "Okay, so what's the bad news?" Tolan asked. "We still don't know the cause of all the additional symptoms. It could be her body's way of cocooning itself after surgery and the weeks of leaks. But her symptoms are unusual for that, even extreme. However, Dr. Shelton and Dr. Coldwell agree that we should start a course of triple antibiotics right now. These heavy, powerful meds treat meningitis, but hopefully they will also treat the cause of Jodi's symptoms. Dr. Coldwell would tell you himself, but he's in clinic all day. He wanted to get these started, and he'll come check in later." She walked out of the room to set the new course of action. Tolan stared at me, lips pursed. "No spinal meningitis. I guess we just have to let the antibiotics do their job and hope they work," he said. "Sorry. I know you want answers. I wish I had them."